We're going to talk about security and compliance, and I know everybody knows that this has changed 50 million times. So we will go just through a few slides, and then we'll go straight into that. So my name is Stacy Deere. I am a Microsoft Offices and Services MVP. I am the founder and senior solutions architect at a company called Focal Point Solutions. On the screen, you'll find my contact information, my social media info, places where you can find some of my content. If you still have SharePoint 2013 or 2010, you can go buy my managed metadata book if you would like. I actually still occasionally get a little small check, so people are still reading it. Yay. Okay, so in this session, we're going to talk about risks, getting started, areas, taking action, getting secure and compliant, maintaining, and then we'll do a little wrap up. So a little bit ago, I emailed myself, just so I, because we got camera and I can prove it. I emailed myself 2 words. At the end of my session, whoever guesses those words, one will win a $25 Amazon gift card, and the other person will win a free workshop on one of the compliance workshops that we do. So, which is a pretty good deal. And they're pretty good, so you'll love that. So we'll do that at the end. So just kind of think of words and stuff that I say as I go through this. All right. So the reason why we have security and compliance is because there are risks out there. I don't know if you guys know this, but we've been going through this thing called COVID, right? So we've all been sitting at home. We can't go outside, we could get sick. So guess what the hackers did, right? They were bored, so they go in there and they just went wild on figuring out ways to attack companies, right? So there were data breaches here and there from all kinds of companies, malware attacks, ransomware. I mean, we actually had a couple companies we knew of that had gotten ransomware. People were getting completely locked out of their environment. We actually worked with an organization where it wasn't ransomware, but they were infiltrated, and the malware literally encrypted every single server, not only at their location, but any server at any of their other locations that were connected to their domain. Kind of a bad thing when, you kind of need that to do your work. So big risks out here. The main risk, these are all risks, but one of the things that is really big is your reputation. We've all seen, when Home Depot, got hacked, and I don't know how many, and we know I got letters from Kroger and a few other big company names telling me that they have had some sort of attack, and some of my information could have been leaked out. So reputation is everything. If a company doesn't go out and fix what their risks are once they have it happen one time, it happens a second time. How many times do you think people are really going to give these big companies where their data, their secure data is getting shared out there, right? So reputation is a lot, and it's a huge expense. Taking care of it in the beginning is not as huge as expense as taking care of it after you've already been breached, especially in the case of ransomware. It's kind of sad now. I don't know if you guys know this. This was something my mom's in insurance, and I actually heard someone say it one day. So I asked my mom, I go, Mom, I hear there's a thing called ransomware insurance. And she goes, yeah. So she tells me all about it. Companies literally can buy ransomware, and malware attack covers all these different things, insurance, just because so many big companies were getting breached and having to pay the ransomware to get their information back, that they can now buy an insurance policy to help cover that. Okay, so it can be a huge expense for more than one reason. And then, of course, this is the time when we have you have that risk, you get breached, and you're like, that's all right, I'm just going to go to a backup and we'll be fine. And then you find out that your backups haven't been successful for 6 months. Unfortunately, I'd love to say these things happen few and far between, but they happen more often than you realize. And almost every one of them that I am aware of had some kind of a backup situation where they were not able to restore right back to where they left off with, just minor differences, right? So there are tons of risks wrapped around, security and compliance and these things. And I had to put pups out here. I don't know if you guys know me. I got three beautiful dogs, so I just had to put pups out here because that's potentially unwanted programs, but we do want puppies. So, all right. So getting started, Microsoft years ago gave us the Security and Compliance Center. It used to be one. People said, oh my God, that's too much in one. Can we separate it? So then Microsoft separated it, and then people were like, man, we were just getting used to why these two are connected, and they connected and separated a few more times. So the Security Center is essentially where you're going to configure a lot of the information, and the Compliance Center is where you're kind of maintaining it, reviewing the alerts, fixing the alerts, all that kind of stuff. Now here recently, some of the configuration pieces have moved over from the Security Center to Compliance Center because they're doing a big shift right now, or should I say Defender, because they've also technically renamed it. You will still hear shown as the Security Center and everything for a while, but once you go into it, you'll see it. And you'll get to see it here in a few minutes too. So areas of security within Microsoft 365 is the secure score. I will show you this. Sensitivity, so like if you have like confidentiality, so you could have different levels of confidentiality, A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, depends on how your company does it. Retention, data loss protection, records management, information governance, threat management, GDPR, e-discovery, service assurance. Under compliance, like you see, the data classification, the policies, the alerts, the Defender endpoint, all these things. However, one thing that you have to keep in mind, these are all things that are available, and there's some new stuff which you will get to see today. But it does depend on the license that you own, what you see and have the ability to use. I'll show you a couple examples of that when we get in there in a second, but they have recently moved some of the huge configuration pieces from security over to compliance, and now they require at least an E5 or the security add-on piece. So of course they found a way to increase licensing and change that for us. We're all used to that one, right? All right, so improvement actions. So I'm just going to go on into the demo here and kind of go through and show you some of this stuff. All right. So if we start here and we go to security and compliance, or security. And if anybody has a question, feel free to ask. Okay. Notice it's calling it Defender now. But there are a number of things out here that Microsoft has supplied for you. One, they provide you a dashboard, right? Microsoft does provide you a lot of things in finding out how you're using things, things that you are using. Are you using it correctly? Do I have this configured properly? How can I test that? Those types of things. Microsoft is thinking of all those things for you, but you got to know they're out here. So it's, sometime if you get a chance to go out and check some of these things out, because they actually literally have trials and attack simulation training and stuff like that you can actually do. So like if I go to attack simulation training, I can actually configure this with what I want to simulate, a cyber attack, and how your environment handles that attack. Have you configured your security properly to where the attack does not get in, or if it does get in, how far does it get in and what it impacts? So it's a pretty cool tool that I play with just to see if I can, how bad I can make it or how good I can get it. But there's a lot of configuration throughout, of course, with Azure and an M365 that play a part in this, but you can actually do simulations. So. All right, so the main thing I want to cover, because it is very important and it kind of gives you kind of like the bird's eye view, which is this thing called the secure score. Notice right now this one is a 29.57%. And they're about even on identity and apps. This is not a good score. It's kind of like, when you're back in school, you want as close to 100% as possible, right? But Microsoft, essentially what they have done is when your tenant was deployed, Microsoft tools go in and see what, how you've got your Azure stuff connected and, all the pieces and parts that you have in place. And it says, okay, they have these items done, right? So, and then these are the things that they need to actually go out and configure. So this is just kind of the actual page, and notice that it shows you the score, it shows you the dates where maybe something increased or decreased. You see over here, regressed. So regressed can be anything new. So like maybe Microsoft made a change to something you had already configured. So they improved upon that. So they need you to go out there and update that configuration. Or or you had it completely configured. Say you had MFA configured in the environment, and then someone went out there, an admin was tired of doing MFA, and they turned their MFA off. Well, it's going to show up on the report because this is no longer going to be 100% and it has regressed. It'll tell you how many you need to address, how many you have planned, because it's not saying just because they're here, you have to do them right now, because all of this is a process. You have different phases of your environment and stuff like that. So, and they understand that. So they give you areas to put them in. So I'll show you exactly how this is done in a minute. How many risks do you accept? Anything recently added or updated, okay? So, and you can kind of see a list down here, and notice here you can see the history. And the one thing I don't know if a lot of people know, and a lot of the new pages and different changes, Microsoft is adding some additional resourcing down here to help, answer some certain questions about some of these individually. But up here, if you go to improvement actions, first thing to notice is it's exportable. Means you can export it into an Excel document, which means you then could put it into a SharePoint list and then, have some Power BI attached to it and show pictures of where you are now on your percentage and show your management how you've been increasing your security. So I've had a number of clients who've gotten, snagged in the security area and gotten breached where they needed to physically show, management that they were getting better. So this was a great way for them to do that. So what Microsoft does is they rank these security items in order by the most important, okay? And then they also give it an impact score, which is how the percentage increases. And then you'll see the status, if it has regressed, if you have the license. So if you have the proper license, and they're talking about Azure license in here, and you have the proper license, then you should have it configured. And this category is identity, product, as I said, Active Directory, and it's not due to an update, right? So last time it was synced, so it went out and checked just here today. So when you go into it, notice here is it gives you a lot of information. So you can edit the status and action plan. Notice I can say it's completed. I need to, I'm scheduled to address. I can say to address. I can say planned and say Duo to manage multi-factor coming X date. I can put a date out there, right? I can also say risk accepted. So like, we get it. You told me I accept this risk. Okay, so then it'll go away and won't come back and continue to bother you. You resolve through a third-party utility. So maybe you had it planned that you guys were implementing Duo, so it was still on your list because it needed to be done. Now you have actually put in the third-party tool. Now you can say Duo installed and configured on 114. Okay. And then notice you have one called resolve through alternate mitigation. Maybe you have some other appliance or something like that. And you just hit save and close. Okay, so that's essentially the status piece of it. If you complete it, if you do it through a third party, complete it with a third party with notes in it, you will get your points for it. If you accept the risk, of course, you're not going to get your points, and planned, you won't either. It just helps you manage what you guys need, what you have planned to do and such. So the other thing that Microsoft has been really great about is giving you a lot of information. Now, initially when I read, I went through and read these, and I was working with a client, and we're getting ready to push some stuff out. They're like, okay, I got to go write some communication up. Can you kind of tell me the impact for the user and kind of like a description? I said, sure. So you know what I did? Copy, paste. You want to know why? Because Microsoft already gave us the data, right? So Microsoft gives us a really good description of what is going to be happening, and it also tells us what the user impact is. Now you may want to add a little bit to it, but they are helping you communicate to your users. Okay, so, and then notice you'll have over here how many, if part of it is completed, it'll show you how many points, history, what your category and stuff over here. So here's some additional information about it protecting against password cracking. You can go in there and see more information, account breach, etc. If you go to the implementation tab, notice you have prerequisites, so it will tell you if there's anything prior to that you have to have configured before you can configure this. Okay, notice you have learn more here as well. So if I was to change this to address, save here. Now notice if in the to address, it tells me my prerequisite here is you have Azure Active Directory Office app. So I just needed the basic Azure. Okay, so you will see one. Notice I have a green check mark there. You could see one, and I'm sure I'll have one that I'll pull up that might say a red X. Maybe it'll say Azure P2 or Azure P1 Premium that you would need to be able to configure that piece of security. Okay, so one thing you will learn as you go through here that the P1 and P2 give you more security than just the one that essentially what we call the default out of the box. But Microsoft also provides you the steps for implementing the MFA or whatever the task is that you need to complete. It actually walks you through the steps to do so. Even in some of them, it says, hey, click on this link, and it takes you right to the place where you literally turn the switch on. Okay, so, and then of course, if you've had history, if you've made changes through this, you would see it through there. And notice it says this has to be managed in Azure. I click that, and it automatically takes me to the place in Azure. As long as I have access, it'll take me to the place in Azure that I need to go to actually configure the policy. Okay, so they give you a ton of information. They've also given you the ability to share. So I can share this to a Microsoft planner. So if you're, someone in IT and this is your responsibility and people are getting assigned tasks, you can share it to a plan. You can share it to a Microsoft team. So if you've got a security team, you can post in there. You can, of course, email, and you can copy a link to provide to others. Okay, so they give you a ton of information on here. Okay, so they're really trying to help you make things easier. Okay, so I always export this, and then I take out all the completed ones, right? And then write it up as a report to the user which ones they need to do, like the ones with the licensing. I'll show you one of those. Turn on risky here. I'll edit this, make it to address so you can see it all. All right. If I go to implementation, see here I have a red X, and it says, hey, you need Azure P2 before you can actually complete this. So that means that I cannot turn on sign-in risk policy for this tenant unless I have this. Now, I don't know if you guys know what the sign-in risk stuff does, risky users, risky accounts. But I literally showed a client today, we were working on an account thing, and I said, the account that I expected that was most likely being pinged as a risky one and blocking it, I said, it's not out here, but here's a bunch of others. One of them literally says, spam spray. So there were accounts out there that someone was trying to get in and spam these accounts, but they were getting caught at the in the risky sign in and risky user stuff. So it never actually penetrated into the user's actual email, because security in Microsoft 365 is like an onion. It's got a lot of different layers, right? So even just out of the box, you have a layer. Then if you add P1, then you got a bunch more configuration, and then P2. And then just, of course, just the regular permissions with sites and all that kind of stuff. So it's just one big onion of different layers. The layers of how secure you need to be depends on the governance requirements that you have to uphold within your organization. If you're financial, you're medical, manufacturing, etc., they all have different compliance regulations they have to adhere to. Okay, so that will actually drive what licensing you really need. And I know licensing can be really expensive, but also can failing an audit. Okay, so secure score, really not that bad to do. Like I showed you, it shows you, just shows you right across the board how to do it, all that kind of fun stuff. Also in Defender, notice you can actually do a exchange message trace. So it gives you some tools for that kind of stuff. Tax simulation thing that I showed you. Microsoft gives you guys a ton of reports out here. Always check these out. There's a bunch of reports they already have. They give you the ability to write custom reports as well. You have auditing. And oh my Lord, when you talk about auditing, it is crazy. What is my thing? Okay, there you go. So I can choose a start date, end date, and time, but look at all these activities that you can audit within an environment. So you think about people who they put in their 2-week notice, and then someone says, hey, I think they're out there deleting or sending a bunch of files or whatever. You can go out here and quickly run an audit report on that certain activity for the certain site or by a user. So you can help run audit reports on stuff like that. Or if there's an HR complaint that someone is sending, various stuff that they shouldn't be sending to others, you have a lot of auditing capabilities out here as well. Okay, and a lot of time, and it really does not affect your environment if you're going out here and just testing some of the things that that would be that you could potentially use and show people. It's not going to have an impact on your environment to do this. Okay. Health, of course, so they're showing you the health, the service health and the message center in here now. So which is, is everything in good shape? Oh, wait a minute. We've got some advisories on Exchange Online. Uh-oh, Yammer. Yammer's down, everybody. So hope you're not using Yammer. And then, of course, the good old message center. So Message Center is probably one of my favorite places, not only because I get to find feature updates and changes and all that kind of stuff, but it's one of those areas, again, that I can sit here and sync to a planner if I wanted to. So I can, anything I need to take care of. I actually, in our environment, I've actually set this up so when in the preferences, over here, I choose the things that we want to know about. And under the email section, I actually send it. Notice here, this one goes, just because this is a dev environment, this goes to my dev account. In our production world, I have other email address, and I have it going to the email address of a team. So any of these updates that we want, like urgent ones or whatever, come into Teams for us for everybody within my organization. So you can route them to Teams to show them to your users, so your users can actually see this information. And the reason why I think that's important and why I wanted to let you guys know that is because, Microsoft is more on this maker thing right now with, anybody can be a maker. They can go out and create things, and, IT doesn't have to always go build everything. Well, if people are going to be makers, they need to know if new features are coming out or any features that they've created are going to be deprecated. So you probably should find a way to share this information with them, because you're never going to know everything everybody is doing and building within your organization. So it's a way just to give them a place that they can go and check that out. Okay. Permissions and roles. So this has been a real big one here lately, especially with a client. So it's really something near and dear. Like, you know, permissions are like governance. You don't want to give people too much access than they need. You only want to give them the access that you want them to have. Well, there are, you know, global admin accounts. You've got Exchange accounts, SharePoint admin, Teams admin, and all that kind of stuff, right? But you also have roles throughout as well. So notice you've got some email roles out here. So billing, compliance, all these different things, right? So somebody, you know, maybe they specialize in a certain area, so you're going to give them those roles, but then they can't get to anything else that they're not supposed to see because, one, they're not trained in it, and two, you don't want them in it anyways. Maybe you just have one person who's working on an e-discovery thing, and they're out there pulling everything, and maybe you have an e-discovery manager, but the only thing they can do is e-discovery. Notice as well, you can also create your own. Creating your own could mean you want to give this person who's the e-discovery manager also compliance administrator, because you want to see if anything showed up on reports or whatever. So you do have the ability to create your own as well. So you, the biggest thing is if they don't need all of the access, don't give it to them. Because one, the tenant will tell you that, hey, you've got way too many global admins, and it is definitely making you less secure. Because anybody want to guess what the first accounts are that are attacked if they are attacked through you know, people trying to get into their accounts? If you haven't guessed it, anybody's got global admin access. All right, so don't have them if you don't need them. And then you just have some wonderful settings down here. All this stuff is new. It takes you to the actual security center. You can say your time zone currently. I have a great feeling there's going to be more out here because I can't see them just creating this just for this. This is just your email settings. If I want to turn on or off automatic redirection. Okay, so they've moved a lot out of here, but they've moved so much into compliance. Okay, so Compliance Center itself, notice as it comes up here, wouldn't surprise me if it shows 0 because that tends to happen, but notice as well they give you a nice dashboard of various things out here. Someone mentioned New Zealand earlier. There you go, there's a driver license communication risk right now. All right, so this is the Compliance Center, and the first thing I always want to cover is the Compliance Manager. Very similar to the secure score. And by the way, I have no concept of time, so if anybody can tell me when I'm getting close, that would be awesome. I lost my phone. Oh, dog's laying on it. Once this comes up, it actually really should not say 0, but the Compliance Manager at times can be a little finicky and slow. Okay, there we go.
It is 5:33 while you're pausing and waiting for that. So you've got about 20 minutes.
Okay, cool. The husky was laying on the phone there. All right. Okay, so notice now that this finally refreshed, it is 74%. However, some people would say that is awesome. I think that's pretty good. You know, hey, we're doing great in compliance. However, the thing you really should be looking at is the fact that Microsoft is already taking care of about 12,000 of these things for you, and you've got 4,000 things that have not been addressed. Okay, so things not completed. Notice it says 360, completed 3, and out of scope 0. Now, can anybody guess why you might have 360 items in here? For one, people freak out when they find out because 360 is really not bad. It's the clients when you pull it and they have like 800 and 900 things out there. And they're like, how are we supposed to get all that done? They start freaking out. Well, even though this is a lot like the security score, it is also very different than the security score. They just work similarly. In every organization, they're going to utilize different things. You also are going to do a phased approach to your implementation. So first, you're going to set up your tenant. You're going to make sure it's secure. from the initial standpoint. You're going to get your Azure Active Directory syncing, so your users are in there. You're going to get your SharePoint stuff set up. People using it, actually getting the data out there in the places it needs to be, right? Well, then at that point, now you can start applying like security policies and doing your confidential labels, retention policies, DLP policies, and all those types of things. You have to have the data in there first. So some of the stuff happens in phases. So that's how you should look at the compliance manager. Notice here you have an export. Also notice here, accept all updates. Now, when they first released this, you guys can be thankful that if you had to experience this, I apologize. And others, thankful they fixed this, that you had to touch each one of them to actually update them. So now you can just accept all updates. So that's a huge plus. But notice you have the improvement action. Notice it's not ranked. There's no ranking here. It tells you the improvement action, which product, how many points you would achieve by completing it, which regulation, right? Which group it's in, default. There you go. What the solution is. So if it's a Windows 10 configuration, Microsoft Defender, Exchange, eDiscovery, etc. What assessment piece it is, and what category. So notice you got managed devices, threat, so like Defender, etc. Has it been tested? What type of action it is, and if it's been assigned to somebody. So it works very similar to the other. We go in here. Again, it provides you all of the information. Okay, so it's telling you here's how to implement. Here, you can edit right here and get to the details. And it tells you how to implement it, how to use the solution to implement. It goes through a whole testing thing, so you can do the testing. You can put the information in the testing. Standards and regulations. This is compliance, right? This one is a data protection baseline, so it's managing these, right? And any documents, right? So essentially, this is like a governance container for certain things, right? It's not an overall governance solution, but it is part of one. Because one of the cool things here with this is these are not all actually action items, okay? So notice I said action type technical, but if we go down, where's my filters? I want, oh, never mind. But you have, see if it comes up. It's not what I want. So you have different actions that you can choose on here for this. So action type, you can have technical, you can have documentation. That's the one I was looking for. Documentation, literally what it's meaning there for documentation is, hey, do you have a disaster recovery document? Have you completed this? There is, I think, document, so like right here, documentation. Here's operational. So they're not all things that you technically have to do. Some of it you just have to prove you have the documentation. You can upload it and complete the task. Now, there's a lot here because there are a lot of repeats. Okay, the reason there are a lot of repeats is because some of the configuration you may need to do for Defender may also be some of the same things that you need to do for retention policies or something like that, so that it could be a task that needs to be done in one or the other. Compliance manager, you only come out here and do the ones for the applications that you're using. So if you're using security and compliance, then you're going to come out here and you're going to create a mail retention policy, and anything around security and compliance. Or if you're just working, you're working on the Defender stuff, then you're just going to focus on the Defender stuff. So this is something that will grow as your company grows in their functionality. So it's not as overwhelming as it seems, because it is something that is going to be progressive. So it will grow organically. You'll complete the things organically as you go through it. Does that make sense? If not, you can say heck no. All right, I don't have any active alerts out here, but yep, look, there's communication risks out there. All right, so in addition out here, you've got data classification. So this is essentially where you start classifying your data, right? So, you know, you're seeing your retention labels, the different types of sensitivity information types that you have out there, how many of them have been detected. So, and again, they give you a lot of information. Once you start configuring this stuff, these things start populating and you get all kinds of information, right? I'd love to deep dive into each and every one of these for you, but of course we would never have time. We literally, Mike Matarani, who is another SharePoint MVP, him and I actually do a full day workshop around these things. And then, you know, we also help them kind of help you get started creating a couple of the policies and all that. But each section could take essentially 2 hours. So one of the things that we've done, which is I'm giving one away later, is we've divided these into different areas down here with the configuration areas, and we will give one of those workshops I told you about, we will give away. So you will get to choose one, and we will do that workshop with you and help you create a couple to get started. So hopefully that makes people happy, because they are very detailed. Now, like I said, there's a ton of things in here. Data connectors is cool. Because it's I don't know if anybody uses BlackBerry anymore, but AT&T and all these kinds, Cisco Jabber and all this, you can actually connect your third-party tool, if the connector exists here, to your system so that it has to meet your compliance regulations that you have implemented in your environment. So you would get feedback and alerts on anything that was violating any of those from anything that you attached in here. Okay, so they've got a number of them in here. I think Zoom is one of them that is in here, if I believe. So Zoom meetings, if you're using Zoom, you can incorporate it in here, and it has to follow the policies that you have implemented within your environment. You have alerts that you get. Alerts can come out here, but whoever spends all their time in the admin center, nobody. They typically only go out there if there is a problem that has arisen. So when you're creating alerts, keep in mind you can send them to email addresses. It means you can send them to a person if you want to, but also think about a team. You can put a team address in there and immediately go to a team thing so someone is notified. It brings you more reports out here. So once you have your labels and all those type of things, it'll give you your top 5 that are being used. Any audit data that might exist out there, anything that classified, what's being used, and you'll be able to deep dive down into them. Okay, so notice you'll be able to go in and get more information. And a lot of these reports, you can actually generate them and then print them, export the information as well. And of course, setting up your policies, you got a number of different ones, like your alert policies, your data loss prevention, retention, terms of use type of policies out there. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the permissions thing again. Remember, only give people the access to the things that they really need. There is not one person in this planet is a master in any of these in one organization. You're going to have somebody that is does your DLP. They might do one other thing, but they're not going to do them all. Someone who deals with privacy management may be someone who is more on the security team as well, your records management, e-discovery, etc. So that's why they have roles to help you guys divide those out, because nobody's going to know it all. Okay, so the compliance center, as I said, like when you're looking at this manager, this is trying to help you be compliant with what you're utilizing. and you can upload documentation and all this kind of stuff. But notice a lot of these things that you have to configure, like policies and your retention labels, your GDPR, all this stuff. Anybody want to guess what you have to have before you can do anything that we're talking about in here?
License.
That's one. I'll give someone else another $25 Amazon gift card if they yell out the right thing. What has the Security and Compliance Center mandated out of clients? It's my favorite word. Come on. All right, I'm running out of time, so I got to say it. Governance. You have to have, your company has to have governance to some level, documented, approved, etc., before they can go out into the compliance manager or into the security and configure anything. You can't go configure any retention policy just on the fly. If you do, just FYI, it was real easy to create, but it ain't as easy to get out of there. Okay, it takes a lot more work to remove a retention policy or remove a sensitivity label than it is to put one in. You need to know prior to going into any one of these areas what your governance is for your organization. So Microsoft has finally found a way to help me prove to companies that you have to have governance, because you cannot do this ad hoc. Okay, so Microsoft's forcing you to do governance now, but what do I do with all this governance? Because in here in the compliance manager, I showed you that all these things listed here, there's some things that I can put documentation in, and just the the configuration of it is governance. This is how this is configured. This is what the honey token account is. You've documented how it works, who's got access, all that kind of stuff. But it's in here, and it's only this stuff. You've got governance all over your organization, right? So one of the things that I always, because you have to do this stuff first before you go out here. So you know me, I rather automate stuff. So I created this site, and now this, you could make the site look like however you want to. It's more about this here, okay? So, I just have some pictures, news about any breaches that might be coming. I always tell people, put the events when your audits are coming up, anything like that. And notice you can have your own little governance team down here, which essentially turn into librarians, okay? And the reason why I say that is every company, when they talk about how many people should be on their governance team, and it's really hard, and the document never gets updated and all that kind of stuff. Well, I came up with a really nifty way to help spread the love, as I like to call it, and allow for everybody to help. So essentially, everybody within your organization can technically be on your governance team with not even really realizing that they are. Okay, so one of the things that I have done to help, because not everybody understands the terminology that you see, right? That you see out there in the admin center, or that might be in an email that you're sending, like from some of that stuff where I said just copy and paste. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I have started actually what I call a terminology library. It's just a list. And you can put categories and what the title of the, like information barriers, or what is that? So now you see the definition of what information barrier is. Well, I can also put, okay, is this something, I want to only put things that our company is using, but how is the company utilizing this within the organization? So it kind of gives you some more background on the information out here. So also companies have a lot of acronyms as well. So it's a great idea that you can put your acronyms and different types of terminology out here, so people don't feel like they read it, but they thoroughly didn't understand it. So it kind of gives them a place they can go to. Okay. So then the other thing that you'll notice is I have different quick links here, right? So I've got one for like communications, and notice I clicked on it, and now okay, so now I've got this communication guidelines. Notice that I have a policy. I've tagged it, right? Oh, I have an expiration date. This person is the owner. This is what version it is. It shows me if it's checked out to anybody, right? So if I open this, voila, I have a page. This page is only on employee communication guidelines, and they're reading one page, and they're not reading an entire 250-page governance document. They're reading a one page on one thing that they wanted to know about. They either searched for it up here or they searched for it in the site. However, notice you can you can add comments, you can see views, you can save for later. The part I like is allowing your users to make comments. So think about if this was a server document with what version of servers you're using, SQL and all that kind of stuff. And one of the the network guys go out there and they're like, oh, no one ever updated that thing. Hey, last weekend we updated the version of Active Directory to whatever. They can put in the information, okay? Now they're not changing the information in the page, they're just supplying feedback because they were the person that did it or they were involved in it, right? So then you actually have your librarians who can validate the information and get the documentation updated, okay? So they can update things like that. So essentially what I have done behind the scenes, and I'm sure people could add more wonderful things, but this is just kind of something I did. So notice I created a view just called governance so I could see them all together. But if you notice, I actually have views for all the different categories, okay? I know who it was last modified by and when, which policy, so it shows up in the proper view, I can set the expiration date. Now, certain things may need to expire differently than others. Some may be quarterly, some may be yearly, etc. Now, if you notice, I can assign an owner to a page, okay? So if I assign an owner to a page and I ask a guy, I'm like, hey, can you read these couple paragraphs on your stuff and let me know if it's correct? If he has to do that once a year, you're probably not going to get very many complaints on asking someone to do that. A heck of a lot different than taking a governance team of 3 or 4 people and having them split a 300-page governance document and then they get the glossy eyes. They've read this thing a few million times and things get missed and they're never accurate. Well, here you can actually assign it to others. You're getting feedback from other people within the organization. You get to grow your governance team. You know what versions you're on. Auditors love it because you can quickly find the information that you're looking for via search or via just clicking, right? You can also tell by version if it's checked out. And then one other thing that I've done on this is based off the expiration date, when things expire, it will automatically email the owner 30, 60, 90 days prior to when their page needs to be updated. It will send out a reminder. If they do not respond, it will escalate to their manager. That way we can ensure governance stays updated and it is being recorded as it is being done. Once it is updated, it will go for review for one of the individuals or librarians of the site. They validate and then they publish, and then it comes out here. So it allows you to automate your governance so that you can stay updated, but also grow your governance team from 3 people trying to do it all to essentially allowing everybody in your organization to participate. Questions? No? This is my picture. Okay. Oh, come on. Someone's got to have a question. All right. Well, if you want to reach out and ask me anything, any advice that you're going through when you're doing configuration, all that kind of stuff. Please let me know.